So this is going to be a pretty special video. Why? Well, this is my favorite game series of all time. This and a few notable others were what made me want to become a game designer for my career, which I'm now in college and taking classes for. This isn't just a video on the original Doom. Nah, that wasn't enough for me to do for its 25th anniversary. 25 years. That's a quarter of a century. A quarter of a century, yet still has an extremely dedicated fanbase, you know, like people with me, and with people still making mods and levels for this game daily. It's kind of ridiculous, honestly, how much love this game still gets, but I mean that in the best way possible. So here's to the years upon years of memories, friends, metal, and inspiration. This is classic Doom, its original sequels, and the 2 console ports that actually matter. This does not include Doom 3, the 2016 reboot, or the crappier console ports that weren't anything really aside from dumbed down versions of the game. I'm going to go over each of them as little as my nerdy self can contain, the contents that you get inside of them, and whether I recommend them or not, rather than a full-on review like usual. If I were to make a review on each of these, it could take hours for me to go through, which I really just don't have the time to do right now. I mean, even with this video, I'm gonna have to try as hard as I can to not make it like 10 hours or something. I could talk about Doom for hours on end, man. But if you do want to see me go completely 110% in depth for each game, keep an eye out for future reviews because I plan to make something like that in the future. So back in December 10th, 1993, Doom was released, mimicking Apogee Software's shareware model. Their previous juggernauts, the Commander Keen games and Wolfenstein 3D, were all published by Apogee. But with this one, they self-published it using the shareware model. This meant that the game was divided into episodes, and the first episode of the 3 was completely free. So you could play the game if you wanted to, regardless if you were broke or not. If you wanted the rest of the game, you would have to call them and order it, and you would get this bad boy in the mail. Oh man, this is one of my personal favorite covers ever, and it's just iconic. This is what we had engraved in our heads whenever we think of Doom. So if you did get this, inside of it came an addendum, which I don't have, this beautiful full color manual with classic id humor, and 4 3.5-inch diskettes. I'm not really sure why mine are gray, but most of the time they're black. It's a small package and it's not much, and the box itself is extremely flimsy and fragile, but I really love having this thing. If you want one of these for yourself, be prepared to trade a kidney for it. It is not cheap and it often goes for hundreds of dollars online, unless you happen to get it from someone that thinks nobody is playing Doom anymore. Sucks for them. As for the game itself, you can't really get as good as this. It's so simple, but it's amazing. It's kind of surprising how well this one still holds up. The game is still extremely fun to play today, and the fact that so many people are still playing it as we speak is a testament to that fact. Here we have the staple of the Doom series. If you live under a rock for some reason, basically all you need to do is get from the start of the level to the end without dying. This can range from a stroll in the park to trying to solve a maze with a pen while avoiding someone trying to stab you, depending on the difficulty level. Nightmare difficulty is a little too unfair due to the enemies moving twice as fast and respawning every 30 seconds or so, while the true hardest difficulty, Ultra Violence, is just perfect for us veteran Doom fans, and it's tough but it's just the right amount. The levels themselves are also pretty straightforward like the goal. You go through rooms of enemies, killing them to prevent them from attacking you more, or just because you like killing shit. As you progress, you'll take on larger groups of enemies, tougher and stronger enemies, the need to find switches and key cards to progress, finding secrets, and getting better firepower. As I said, it's so simple but it just works so well. You can also find secret levels if you look hard enough or just look up the walkthrough that Big Mac Davis did. All of these secret levels are great levels to find, and the song that plays in them is forever engraved in my head, kinda defining my middle school days. But the way you get them is very specific, so you can't exactly just stumble across them. As for the weapons, you'll start off with this weak ass pistol, Then you get my personal favorite and probably the weapon you'll use the most in the game, the shotgun. Then you'll get the chain gun, the rocket launcher, plasma rifle, and the mother of all weapons, the BFG, the big f***ing gun. Or your measly fist if you run out of ammo, which could be upgraded and kill all the enemies in a matter of a hit. You'll also find a chainsaw with unlimited fuel. A chainsaw in 1993. You might think these weapons are pretty standard for 90s shooters, and you'd be correct, but that was due to them being so damn effective in this game. Every single one felt like it was useful and it had its own purpose, except for the pistol, but whatever. All of these weapons were used to pretty much define the first-person shooter genre. The enemy types have their own strengths and weaknesses, which are for you to figure out on your own. But once you do figure that out, it makes you think about the priority you need to kill them and employ some strategy, unlike some games today. The first enemy you'll encounter are these possessed dudes referred to as zombies or former humans or something, as well as their pissed off brethren, the shotgun dudes. They're hit scan and they're annoying. Then you'll encounter the first demon and the most common types of enemies in the game, the imps. After these are the demons, or as most people call them, the pinkies or pinky demons, followed by the lost souls, the most annoying pricks in any game ever, the cacodemons, which are my personal favorite, and the barons of hell, which are introduced brilliantly as bosses at first. Then in the second episode, it introduces you to a cyber demon as a boss fight, which is probably the most iconic and most powerful demon in the entire series. Then in the last episode boss fight, you battle the Spider Mastermind, which is still a powerful boss, but from what I could tell, it's not as powerful as the Cyber Demon. On top of this, you can get items that you'll definitely need along the way. You can get the typical ammo, health, and armor, but you'll also get armor and health bonuses, which increase your health and armor by 2 points, going over the 100 limit if you're at max for either. You can also get something called a Soul Sphere, which increases your health by 100, again going over your max of 100 for a max of 200 if you get it. You will need these as there's lots of times you'll be getting attacked. You can also get radiation suits which let you walk on acid or lava, berserk packs which bring your health back up to 100 regardless of what it was previously, while also upgrading your fists like I said earlier. There's also invulnerability spheres which are pretty obvious what they do, partial invisibility power-ups which supposedly just make enemies less accurate, but it really doesn't do much in all of my experience. Computer maps give you full maps of the level layout, and lastly are light amplification visors which will increase your vision in dark areas, which are much more needed than you'd think. Doom's lighting system? Yeah, that was rather revolutionary the time it came out, as well as the graphics themselves. They made you feel tense and at the edge of your seat. Maybe not today, but at least back then. I don't have the time to say what I want to in depth, but to cut to the chase, I think that the level design in here is just stellar. Mainly the levels made by the legend himself, John Romero. They just have the absolute best progression and flow to them. Especially in the shareware episode. Every single level in there progressed from start to finish so smoothly, and each transition to the next just felt like a real transition. It got more difficult and hellish as you went on. Progression in level design done in the way it is here is something that's severely lacking in games today in my honest humble opinion. Speaking of hellish, the atmosphere in this game felt way darker than its two sequels, which I'll obviously get to in a bit. The first episode is in sort of this space station on Mars, the second episode is some of the same but with some hellish architecture, and the third episode is in hell itself. That's pretty metal. Speaking of metal, the soundtrack just kicks all kinds of ass. It's so iconic and it's probably one of the best I've ever heard in a game. It's done by none other than the legendary Bobby Prince, who also worked on other masterpiece game compositions. So, should you play Doom? You must. I would easily recommend this one without a shadow of a doubt. With it only being like $5 to obtain a digital copy and the many different source ports to play the game on modern hardware, this should really be a no-brainer. It's my personal favorite of the series, mainly for good old John's nearly unmatchable level design. So go and play this however you can. If you don't like the original two Doom games, something is severely wrong with you. That term, it's not for everyone, doesn't really apply here in my opinion. I haven't met a single person that doesn't like Doom, regardless if they like old games or not. There's a reason that thousands of people are still playing this game 25 plus years later. It's as iconic to the first-person shooter genre as Mario is to the platforming genre. Neither of them were the first of their kind, but they were both the first to do nearly everything right, and the reason that they have such a high and loved legacy today. Okay, before I talk another hour or 10 about this game, let's keep going. So Doom was the biggest game of 93 and 94, and it really wasn't that surprising to see there eventually come a sequel that same year called Doom 2 Hell on Earth. Doom 2 came in a big box with possibly one of my favorite covers ever in two versions, one that contained the game on CD-ROM and the other that contained the game on 5 3.5-inch floppies as well. It also came with some papers, an addendum thing, and another full-color manual, which I love. Judging by how well this game sold, it's very easy to find physical copies of this game, including complete in-box copies as well. You'll probably have to pay between $20 and $60 depending on the condition and how complete it is. Do yourself a favor and get it. I don't really care who you are or how poor you are, just get it. It's a must in every gamer's household, and it costs about the same price as a game today would cost on store shelves. If you're a lame person and just want to play the damn thing, you can get it for $6 on Steam or on GOG for $10, but if you do get it on GOG, you get it with its expansion pack titled The Master Levels as well as Final Doom, so it's a pretty good bang for your buck. Onto the game itself. At first glance, you probably would have been mistaken for thinking that it's just a reskin version of Doom, or it's just an expansion, because, I mean, basically it is. This time around, the game was only distributed through retail and had no shareware. Due to this, it's one long continuous set of levels instead of being played in an episodic format. Personally, I kinda like this change. I kinda prefer the way the levels were split in the episodic format, but it makes it much more convenient to be able to keep all of your weapons instead of having to find each and every one of them again at the start of each episode. Gameplay wise, the differences are that the levels are far more large and expansive, which I'll get into in a sec, and the game is slightly more difficult with very light graphical and AI improvements, and the inclusion of the Super Shotgun, one of the most iconic weapons in gaming history, as well as the inclusion of some new enemies. The new enemies you get are the former commandos, or the heavy weapons dude, or chain gun guys, or whatever the hell you want to call them, and they're basically like the regular zombie soldiers, but they have a chain gun instead of a pistol or shotgun and are the textbook definition of annoying. You also get Arachnotrons, a smaller version of the Spider Mastermind and shooting plasma cells instead of chain gun bullets, the Mangybai, which are these giant blobs of brown flesh, like me, that shoot rapid fire blasts at you and are very dangerous, the Revenants, skeletons that shoot out heat-seeking blasts at you and are also very annoying but pretty cool at the same time, the Pain Elemental, which spawn out lost souls as if those weren't already annoying enough, and lastly the Archviles that can burn you regardless of how far away you are from them and can reanimate any corpse they find. So yeah, there's a handful of newer enemies, but most of them are kind of annoying more than anything. I mean, I appreciate these additions, but I feel more annoyed with their presence than excited. I do love the Archviles, and they're probably my favorite of the bunch, but they're a little bit too overpowered in my opinion to keep the game feeling balanced, at least for newcomers to the series. But all of these enemies do add extra challenge if you're looking for it, which is always welcome in my book. Anyways, when I said the levels are far more larger, I mean they are way larger. Most people seem to like this change, but I didn't really care for it too much. Some of them were great, but I found myself getting lost way too often to the point where it just annoyed me and it wasn't as fast paced as it was when I was mowing these enemies down. Don't get me wrong, it was tolerable and to the point where I could figure it out on my own, but no matter how many times I play this game, I always seem to forget what to do on half of the maps even though I revisit them at least once a year. It's far more cryptic than the last one, but again, a lot of people seem to like this where I felt that I preferred the more fast pace to the original. That change in pace kinda killed this one from Oh, f*** off. That change in pace kinda killed this one from being the superior one in my eyes. The level design in the original was just far better to me. It's kinda sad because this is what a sequel should be. The same game with everything that made the original such a big success, but adding more to it and building on the formula. As far as the atmosphere goes, it was okay. Just okay. It's weird that this is called Doom 2 Hell on Earth because none of the levels feel like you're anywhere near Earth. Some of them don't really feel like hell either. I don't really know how to explain them. Even the so-called downtown level with tons of buildings didn't feel like you were on Earth. There wasn't that cool, eerie, dark, hellish atmosphere like the original in most of the levels. There were a few levels that did feel pretty dark to me, like Map 18, The Courtyard, my personal favorite, Map 25, Blood Falls, and Map 27, Monster Condo, to name a few. But anyways, yeah, the Super Shotgun and enemy additions are totally welcome to the series here, and nobody will disagree with you there. Despite the newer enemies being quite annoying here and there, they were great in terms of upping up the challenge, and that really just comes down to personal preference. And just like the last game, the music just kicks all kinds of ass everywhere. It's one of the best soundtracks I've ever heard, done again by the legendary one and only Bobby Prince. I strongly recommend this one, even considering it a must-play. If you're brand new to Doom for whatever reason, I think you'll find both this one and the original one your best places to start. Start with the first one and then move on to this one. It'll definitely feel like a progression if you do it that way. Just don't say I didn't warn you about how irritating some of those newer enemies can be. For some strange reason, after they made Doom 2, they decided to make an additional episode to the original one called Thy Flesh Consumed and sell it at retail in 1995. Just like Doom 2, there were two versions you could pick up, one on 5 3.5-inch floppies and the other on CD-ROM. I don't have this at the moment since I've been trying to get it for cheap, but if you were to get this one for yourself, then the contents inside each box were the game media itself and this absolutely beautiful full-sized signed Doom poster. The poster alone makes this a solid bang for your buck, though some people understandably wanted to play this newer episode without spending $40 at the store for something that they already bought. So, to be fair to anyone that already had a registered copy, they had a freely available patch to upgrade the game to version 1.9 of the game, which was this, the Ultimate Doom. This version sold so well, even outselling the original mail-order version, and proved to be a really good business move on its part, releasing these in stores for people who had no access to the internet or couldn't use their parents' credit cards. The game itself was slightly updated to fix some bugs and other issues, and this is the most common version of the game used today for the original one. This is the one that everyone plays, as you'd be silly to play the one with less levels. The extra episode added 7 main levels and 1 secret level for a total of 8. No new enemies, items, or music, just levels. Personally, gameplay-wise, I didn't care a whole lot for this 4th episode, and I don't really know what it is. Maybe it's just that the episode feels artificially unfair. Sure, you can't complain too much when you play on a hard difficulty, but even on the easier ones, this episode just had way too many ends that I found myself getting stuck, as well as many times that there were way too enemies and way too little weapons and ammunition available to mow them down. I also didn't like how they removed the map section during the level stats screen, though the atmosphere in here surpasses even the hellish layouts of the original 3 episodes. It's amazing how dark and evil this episode feels. Like, I legitimately felt threatened in this one as a kid. And I'm not talking about the cheap difficulty, I mean just by the strong, evil presence that you feel throughout these levels. As someone who loves dark, horror-related things, I'm totally welcome to this kind of stuff. But as to Christians in the 90s, it was just something else to try to ban the game. There were 3 levels in particular that I absolutely loved from start to finish. Map 3, Unruly Evil, Map 7, and Hell Followed, and the secret level Fear. But I didn't really enjoy the others that much, and Map 2, Perfect Hatred, pretty much sums up how I feel about that level. It's one of my least favorite levels in the entire series, and I hate it every single time I play. The whole thing feels like a drag because you barely have any weapons but are constantly throwing cacodemons in Barrens of Hell. Moving on to my final thoughts, of course I recommend this one. I know I said I didn't care that much about these added levels, but I still definitely recommend it as much as, if not more than the original, since it's all you can get nowadays and it includes the original episodes, so why the hell not? But if you already have the original one, just get an update file or something, or if you want a few more difficult levels for original Doom without the annoying ass pain elementals or the awesome super shotgun, you can do that too. Physical copies can range anywhere from $20 to $100. Despite trying to get the cheaper one, I think it's worth every penny regardless, mainly for that beautiful poster. If you want to play the game or just get the WAD file, you can get it either on Steam or GOG, being $6 on GOG and $5 on Steam. On December 26, 1995, literally the day after Christmas, which was a stupid move in my opinion, id released master levels for Doom 2, and holy crap, just look at this beautiful box. I don't know why they released it a day after Christmas, because I'm pretty sure they could have gotten much better sales releasing it a week or so prior, so people would get it for themselves as Christmas gifts or for someone else or something, but whatever. It's not really that big of a deal since it's still sold pretty well anyways. But yeah. Look at this beautiful box. This is again one of my favorite covers ever. There's no screenshots on the back though, and just some text about the levels. It also includes Maximum Doom, which states it has over 3,000 levels. Christ almighty. You might as well forget about seeing the light of day ever again indeed. Inside, it includes a digipack style case holding the game on CD-ROM, since a box of floppies couldn't even consider holding the amount of content this thing has. A manual, some stuff that no one cares about, and this beautiful poster. Every time I look at it, I really just want to hang it up somewhere, but I also don't want to ruin it, so I just keep it in here. If you want a copy for yourself, they don't really pop up too often, and it's somewhat of a collector's piece now, but they're not impossible to find. A complete copy will typically set you back anywhere from $50 to a whooping $120. If you go to GOG, you can get it for $10 bundled with Doom 2 and Final Doom, but if you get it on Steam, you have to get it as part of the Classic Doom Complete bundle thing, which also includes the Ultimate Doom and Final Doom, but it's $15 for the entire thing, which isn't that bad. Going on to the game itself, the master levels includes 20 new levels to be played with Doom 2. Each level is its own separate WAD file, which means each one you play will start off without the weapons you get as you finish them. Each and every single one of them start you with normal stats and a pistol. There's a way on modern hardware to bypass this with a WAD that combines all of the levels, but I think these were meant to be played separately since they're all very different. Don't get me wrong, I mean it can be very annoying finding the weapons again, but there's something about playing these levels in the way that they're meant to be played. And to be honest, they were made so that you can get most of the weapons a good amount through each level, so it's not nearly as bad as the originals where you would have to spend multiple levels trying to find the weapons again if you didn't save your progress. Surprisingly, they're overall pretty solid levels. Some of them are just okay, but a lot of them I enjoyed my time playing through. They're different enough to not feel very repetitive, the atmosphere in a lot of them are even darker than the ones in Thy Flesh Consumed, they progress fairly well, and they're overall rather lengthy and just fun to play. The music in all the levels are used on the map that they're modeled after in Doom 2, which isn't a bad thing because like I said, that soundtrack just kicks all kinds of ass. None of these levels were made by id Software, and instead were hand-picked by the Doom community of the time to be part of the expansion, and surprisingly they really don't feel that way. They honestly feel like there's something that id Software themselves made, which is really impressive. So the designers did a stellar job making them, and id Software did a stellar job picking these bad boys out. The Maximum Doom levels on the other hand, they're not that great. In fact, they all feel very weak, and it feels like they went for quantity over quality here, which is kind of a bummer. No, I didn't go through all of them, but from what I did play, most of them were pretty lame. Speaking of quantity, they lied about that too. There's definitely a lot of levels here, like hundreds for sure, but I strongly doubt that there's over 3,000. Oh well. I don't know if I can really recommend this, to be honest. If you want less Doom 2 and a completely new experience, then pass on this one. If you want more Doom levels, then grab it. Or if you're a hardcore Doomer like me, or if you just like collecting beautiful boxes, or if you can't get enough of the base game, then get it. Otherwise, you might as well skip it because you're not really missing that much. Final Doom was the last of the original trilogy, being released in 1996. It was advertised as a massive closing to the original Doom trilogy, being split into two huge 32-level magawads, essentially being a modified Doom 2 level pack. It was like getting two Doom games in one, which is pretty damn good value. It came in a clamshell box, similar to Heretic Shadow of the Serpent Riders if you're familiar with that one. Though, while that was modeled after some sort of grimoire or a spellbook or something, this one was modeled after an ammunition box, which was just cool as hell. Inside of the box, it included another addendum thing, some other various little things here and there, and the game itself on CD-ROM inside of a digipack with a pretty thick full-color jewel case size manual. Physical copies are pretty mixed in pricing and steal anywhere between $40 and $100 from your wallet. As for lamer but more convenient digital copies, again it's like $6 on Steam and it's on GOG, you know the drill. And Final Doom. Where to start? Well, first off, again, this added nothing new to the series. No new enemies, no new weapons, no new items or anything. But there were a whooping 64 levels in total, all very lengthy and challenging, and one of the parts had entirely new music, which I absolutely loved, just like the last one. It consisted of more metal-inspired MIDI tracks done by none other than the Prince himself yet again. So the first part was titled TNT Evolution. Yeah, see, the music is pretty cool. But, this entire map pack felt like it just wanted you to waste as much time as possible by confusing you on where to go. Doom 2 was confusing at times, but it was tolerable for the most part. This one almost feels like Hexen levels of confusing. Seriously, push this button to open a door across the other side of the big ass map, but nothing will be said or indicated that pushing the switch has done so, because the door it opened is way too far away for you to hear any sound or give any sign that it opened. It's just annoying. The atmosphere feels like Doom 2, and again, gone are the dark, creepy, hellish landscapes of the original. Don't get me wrong, I actually kind of loved some of the level designs in here, but it's just very tedious and more of an annoyance to navigate through them. I guess I like the design of the levels, but not the level design itself, if that makes sense. This is a pretty great pack for veteran Doom fans that want more, but if you haven't played Doom in your life because you live under a rock or you live in a wholesome Christian household that hates shooting things, then this is not the one for you to start off with. Avoid it until you've played the living shit out of Doom 2 and you want something for the big boys. The other episode was titled The Plutonia Experiment. I could say the same with Plutonia as I just did with TNT, but this one was made with the intent of being too hard for most Doom players. TNT acts as the true final Doom whether it feels like it or not, while Plutonia just acts as an expansion to Doom 2. It uses the same music as Doom 2, so it's evident that this was in fact just made as an expansion. But again, just like the master levels, none of these were made by id Software, and you can kind of actually tell this time around, unlike the master levels. The TNT pack was made by Team TNT, a small group of WAD-making hobbyists, and Plutonia was impressively made by 2 brothers in a span of 4 months, which is extremely impressive if you ask me. One of them said that Plutonia was made for people who beat Doom 2 on hard with ease and were looking for a brand new challenge. It was indeed a challenge, and just like TNT Evolution, I don't recommend this one for newcomers, though it is much more tolerable to navigate than TNT despite its trickier moments here and there. One level I really liked in Plutonia, Hunted, map 11, I felt should have been the introduction for Archviles in Doom 2. They are presented in Doom 2 kind of randomly, but in this level it introduced pretty much nothing but them, and it did it brilliantly in a way that it forces you to learn just how they work. As far as the atmosphere goes, pretty much the same thing for the most part, aside from a select few which feel like they were pulled straight from the first game. My personal favorite, map 10, had the perfect design. There's other very well made levels like this one, but again, I can't recommend this to newcomers at all. It's just too difficult for someone new to Doom to fully enjoy. So my final thoughts on Final Doom is that again, I recommend it for veteran Doom players that have played enough Doom 2 but want something new, but I don't recommend it for newcomers. If you're new, stick with Doom and Doom 2. All of these that I just discussed, aside from the master levels, were released in a bundle called Doom Collector's Edition in 2001. It was released in 3 versions, a big box which I'm missing as of this video, a small box, and a fold-out digipack. I have it in small box form here, and it comes with no manuals, no artwork aside from the box itself, or really anything. Just the original trilogy on a disc, and another disc with a preview of Doom 3. Not even the master levels are included in here. These 2 discs were the only things included in all 3 of the releases, with some just including a jewel case of the trilogy instead of the Doom 3 disc. It's really just the weirdest thing. You would think something advertised as a collector's edition would have much more goodies included inside of it, but I guess they just wanted this as a cash grab. I mean, not even having a manual in here is just hugely disappointing in my opinion. Especially with a box as beautiful as this thing. There's so much potential for this to be a true collector's item. But this has been out for like almost 20 years now, so I guess the potential is gone. It's definitely nostalgic though, since this was my first legit copy of Doom I ever owned. I also loved the auto run to bits. If you have this, you know exactly how cool it is. Yeah, that's something I could never get enough of. It's also not the original DOS version, but the official Windows port called Doom 95. Again, nostalgic for me since I played this one way more than the DOS one, but I don't really like the interface or how the mouse doesn't work if you enable it. Though, the visuals are far better than the DOS Doom, so if that's your thing, I guess go for it. But really, I don't recommend getting this release unless you have no copies of Doom, either physical or digital, since if you want, you can copy the WAD files off your disk and use them to play with any source port you want. But again, I don't think I can really recommend this release to anyone. Unless again, of course, you're a hardcore Doomer that needs to have every single thing in existence Doom. On top of all of these stand the modding community. You have so many mods to choose from. You could spend the rest of your life playing these and probably still not go through every single one of them. You have stuff like huge 32 level map packs, total conversions that completely change the game up, like Sergeant Mark's Brutal Doom, which I love but personally prefer the feel of the original a little more, Batman Doom, Demon Steel, Possessed, a complete remake of Apogee's Hocus Pocus, and even classics like Mario and Sonic. On top of these, you have other things like meme wads or Terry wads, which people hate, but I stream on my meme page because they're funny. Aside from the game just being genuinely good and holding up so damn well in today's day and age, I think this is why the game's legacy has lived as long as it has. There's so many creations and pretty much endless possibilities you can go with this. So with all of these, you really can't run out of Doom to play. Going back in time a little bit here because I felt like it should be talked about last, in 1996, shortly after id Software released their juggernaut Quake, they released this limited collector's set called the id Anthology, which included every single game the company has made up until the very first Quake, including all of the previously mentioned Doom games, Ultimate Doom, Doom 2, Final Doom, and even the Master levels. I felt like this was needed to be shown here since it's literally every id Software fan's wet dream come true. Maybe. I don't know what goes on through people's minds. But really, this is the definitive package for any id Software fan. I am missing the t-shirt, but you probably aren't going to find it unless you dish out an extra several $100s, and honestly, while it's cool, it's definitely not worth that extra few hundred. It's literally just a black shirt with the id Anthology logo on there and a mace from Quake. My friend has an extra one which I'll be getting at some point, but I don't have it now. Aside from that, you get this sheet of paper which lists the games in the package, originally located on the back of the box. Most people got rid of this for some reason. I really don't know why, because, I mean, you would think people would want to keep track of the games on the box without having to put the discs in every time, but I guess not. It does look pretty cool though. Also included is this paper manual, which is just some basic stuff listed down, and an RSAC sheet. I didn't originally have these papers, but my buddy Dorian lent me these to show and discuss them in this video specifically. So, if you're watching this, thanks a bunch, man. It's greatly appreciated. Aside from those, you also get a neat poster, which is too big for me to really show, an id Software phone card thing, a dog tag, a Cyber Demon miniature pewter figure, the infamous Doom comic, you know, rip and tear till it's done. Most people seem to bash it, but I personally love it because it's so damn cheesy. And lastly, but definitely not least, the main guts of this juggernaut, the Book of Id, which is a beefy steelbook thing containing very detailed history of the company up until that point, with 4 game discs inside. Disc 1 is the vintage disc with all of their games aside from Doom and Quake. Disc 2 is the Doom disc and has the Ultimate Doom, Doom 2, Final Doom, and the Master levels with full Windows and DOS support. Disc 3 has Quake, and Disc 4 has Wolfenstein 3D and Doom on Mac. Talk about a beefy package. When you insert Disc 1, you can install a digital manual containing easier to access manuals for all of the games. I totally prefer physical ones, and the one you get is rather disappointing, but the digital one in here is actually pretty cool and well put together for a digital manual, giving out full contents, enemies, hints, story, and other useful stuff for each game. It also includes the passwords needed to play the Spear of Destiny and Aliens Ate My Babysitter. This entire package is just absolutely recommended for me to get however you can. There's only a few downsides to this release, which I'll probably get into in another video hopefully soon, but the only one I'd feel worth mentioning here is how goddamn pricey this thing can be. If you want this and you find a boxed copy that includes everything except the shirt for $200 or less, then you'd have found a steal. I'm not even joking. Complete copies of this thing typically go for over $700 US in price, making this the most expensive to find in this video. It's not particularly rare in my experience, at least not the Book of Id by itself, just very, very expensive. So either be prepared to wait a long time to find a cheap one, or donate a kidney to your local library or something. Doom was obviously popular enough to have been ported to literally everything. Super Nintendo, Game Boy, Atari Jaguar, Sega 32X, Sega Saturn, fridges, calculators, and so on. I'm not even joking, you really can't make this stuff up. The closest thing in terms of quality to the actual DOS version was the port on the original Sony PlayStation. It was released by Midway towards the end of 1995. Yeah, that Midway. Physical copies were sold well enough to be re-released in greatest hits and jewel cases, as well as the original PlayStation 1 long boxes, as this one's shown here. The manual's pretty decent, but it's kind of disappointing that it's in black and white. Still though, it's worth finding, and it'll typically cost you anywhere from $20 to $40. This version of Doom ran at 30 frames per second pretty consistently, and it had the same game. However, despite having some levels taken out, this port was actually done with both Doom and Doom 2 bundled together, so it was a pretty good deal. There weren't that many changes, but the changes that were there were instantly noticeable. The lighting, sound, and music are far different. Instead of metal meaty tracks, there are these far more ambient, horror-esque tracks that just get the feel of the atmosphere done so well. The lighting is far darker and also helps set the atmosphere and tone so well, and the sound of the enemies are all pitched way lower. Compare this to this. And this to this. Lord, that's a drastic change. The music was done by Audrey Hudges, and I really gotta give you props, man, if you ever happen to see this video. You did an amazing job with the soundtrack, and you have my utmost respect, because I think atmospheric music like this is really hard to make, especially ones that are well done. So great job. Also, some of the enemies from Doom 2 are put in Doom 1 levels if you pick the hardest difficulty. Thankfully, there's no nightmare since the tech wasn't capable of respawning enemies. Though, no archviles were put in here due to the hardware limitations. They did add a nightmare demon, which is really just a regular pinky demon, but black and 3 to 5 times stronger, requiring several rockets to the face. This was a damn good port overall, and one that I definitely recommend getting if you have a PlayStation or PlayStation 2. The only real complaint I had with this one was the multiplayer. I mean, I kind of forgot to mention the multiplayer in the originals, but going back to this one, there is multiplayer, but it used the shitty link cable system. For those of you that don't know what it is, it's a very early part of PlayStation development where games that had multiplayer had to be connected to 2 separate PlayStations to play the game together. I don't know who in their right mind thought this would actually be a good idea. I mean, come on. This would mean that you would need 2 copies of Doom, 2 PlayStations, original models too, because the ones after the first one didn't even have the port to support the cable, 2 TVs, and 2 cables. Who the hell had the time, money, and space for that? The only redeeming quality of this is that the game won't have any sort of performance drops and you'll get your own entire TV screen. But this was just an unrealistic thing to do for the most part unless you're some obsessive PlayStation fan. Aside from that, this is definitely a port that everyone should check out at some point. Final Doom was also ported to PS1 in a similar fashion, changing the lighting, the music, and the sound to create a far darker atmosphere and featuring both level packs, TNT and Evolution, boasting over 60 levels in total just like the PC version. On top of this, it also surprisingly included 13 levels from the Master Levels expansion pack, which is pretty cool. If you want to play Doom and only have a PlayStation and can't play it on PC for whatever, or you just want to experience these different versions, they're definitely worth it. 2 thumbs all the way up for this damn impressive port. Now, thankfully, that wasn't the last we got of this ambient version of Doom. A little over a year later, the Nintendo 64 was rising in popularity, And of course, the big question was when Doom was getting ported to the system, not if. Because everyone knew that it was eventually going to happen at some point. Midway ended up developing it again, but the Nintendo 64 wasn't powerful enough to render the Doom engine. So they thought, hey, let's make everything from scratch and make new levels, new enemies, and all that stuff. Eventually, in early 1997, Doom 64 was released, and to many people's surprise, it was not necessarily a port, but a brand new, full-blown game, and a damn good one at that. This gave people a reason to get this one specifically, some people even buying the console itself just for this game. Though hearing the title Doom 64, people initially thought that it was just another Doom port. Boy, were they wrong. As with most Nintendo 64 games, this one came in a small rectangular cardboard box, containing inside the Nintendo 64 thing, the manual for the game, which is thankfully in full color and goes over everything in great detail, and the game on a cartridge. If you want this thing, it's also kind of a collector's piece and one of the tougher complete in-box Nintendo 64 games to go after, and for good reason. No one in their right mind would want to get rid of something like this. You can download a PC port called Doom 64.exe, which is a masterfully done port, so long as you have a copy or iWAD of Doom 2. Your best experience will be playing this game on the original hardware in my opinion, so I wholly recommend dishing out the extra money to go and get the real thing. Most copies are roughly around $80, though they can throw you back anywhere as little as $30 to a whooping $150 for a minty fresh sealed one. Getting the cartridge by itself is much cheaper though, and it'll probably cost you about $5 to $20 for a copy of that, so grab that one if you want to save some paper. It was originally set to be titled Doom: The Absolution, but they made it Doom 64 due to marketing reasons. There was another PC port aside from Doom 64.exe called Doom 64 Absolution, but this one wasn't 100% true to the original. It's also the only canonical sequel to the original Doom games. This one is referred to by most fans as either True Doom 3 or Puzzle Doom, since figuring out where to go in this one always felt like a puzzle. This version feels even darker than the PlayStation Dooms. The enemies are redesigned to look more evil, more satanic, and more powerful. Some of these legitimately creeped me out when I was younger, especially the Cacodemon and the Pinky Demon redesigns. Good lord, man. The only enemies this game didn't have in it, just like the PlayStation Dooms, was the Archvile, again due to technical limitations, and the Revenant. For this game exclusively, they added another enemy type, the Nightmare Imp, which is really just a slightly more powerful imp. It's nothing too special. The game also featured a weapon not present in any of the other games, the Unmaker. What a metal name. It's made from demon bones and uses energy that's so dark that it melts demons. Seriously, a weapon called the Unmaker, made of demon bones, that melts demons using evil energy. You can't get more metal than that. Holy shit. This actually was a weapon that was supposed to be in the original Doom games, referenced in Doom's original design document, the Doom Bible, though it never made it to the final versions, and I always wondered why. I guess maybe because it felt a little unfitting compared to the other weapons or technical limitations, but I'm not 100% sure. But yeah, anyways, going back to this behemoth of a game, I think I prefer this game's level design almost as much as the originals. Yes, some of the design is cryptic and puzzle-like, and I know that was a criticism I gave when I talked about Doom 2 and TNT Evolution and Plutonia, whatever, but in this game it felt more natural and much less annoying. To put it in better words, the game felt like it was designed to be a little bit more slower paced than the others, rather than the original that was designed to be very fast-paced, which is kinda why I didn't like the slower parts of the originals. Some parts made me scratch my head wondering where the hell I was supposed to go, but I figured them out somewhat quickly in a matter of a few minutes. In Doom 2 and TNT, there were levels I spent 30 minutes on due to me being stuck somewhere at some point. It was very tedious and annoying. But in here, again, it just feels natural and I really like it in here. It definitely has its annoying moments too, don't get me wrong, but they just felt very natural. Also, the levels where you're directly in hell felt like hell. Not like they did in the original games, but like a legitimate, dark, twisted, demented hell. And if you know me or watch this video for more than 5 minutes, you know I'm a total sucker for anything dark and horror-esque like this. The music was done by the same guy that did the PlayStation soundtrack, Andrew Hulshult, so you know this stuff is good. I have very little to complain about this one. Even the save system was done pretty well. You could save your data on a memory card if you wanted to, but if you didn't have one, then you could use a password system too. So it was convenient either way, regardless of which one you had. The only thing I could really complain about was the controls, because the layout for this thing is extremely annoying for a game like this, but you can change it if you want. It ain't no mouse and keyboard though, that's for sure. Unless you play the PC port of it, but that kinda ruins the point. You can do that, you can buy the cartridge if you have a Nintendo 64, what the hell ever, I don't care. Get this and play it. I'd go far enough to say that it's almost just as essential to play this one as it is the original too. So definitely check it out. It should come at no surprise that I'm just a massive Doom dick rider at this point, but I try to look at these from an actual gamer perspective instead of just being totally blinded by nostalgia, which I probably might be, but I feel like I'm giving my honest thoughts the way I've always thought ever since I was a toddler playing this stuff. And I didn't even talk about the source ports. You can use things like Skulltag, Xandronum, Z-Doom, or most commonly GZ-Doom, and you can play the game in modern operating systems with modern resolutions, modern controls, the ability to look up and down, jumping, all that stuff. But for me personally, I'm kind of a purist when it comes to this stuff. I really feel like Doom was meant to be played the way it was made, and in the sense that, you know, you can't look up or down or you can't jump, and if you want to play with those, go for it. Nobody's stopping you. I'm not gonna bash you or anything for it, but that's just my personal opinion. I do like a lot of the mods that are being made, and I will play those however the hell they're made. I don't care. If you're a first-person shooter fan of any kind, they're going to keep you entertained for hours on end if they haven't already. If you're a newcomer to the series from whatever rock you were living under, then my strongest recommendations are Doom or Ultimate Doom, Doom 2, and Doom 64 in that order. I don't recommend getting the Master levels or Final Doom unless you're a huge Doom fan, even though I personally really had a great time going through the 20 or so Master levels. None of the actual ports are really worth looking at aside from Doom and Final Doom on the PlayStation 1. Happy 25th birthday to the greatest franchise of all time in my humble opinion. If you liked some of the more metal sounding tracks you've been hearing in the background, I'm going to give a quick little shout out to my buddy Andrew Hulshult, since he did pretty much all of it. And he does a great job with his music and remaking tracks, and you should definitely check out his work. He's also done the music for Rdr.Exe, Dusk, which is another game you should play, but I'll go over that some other day, the Rise of the Triad 2013 reboot, and the latest Quake Champions. Go listen to all of it. You know deep down you want to. Though I should also give a thank you to Bobby Prince for making the good old originals. Also, thank you Clint or Lazy Game Reviews for letting me use your ad-lib version of Scentless Apprentice. I love it to death, no pun intended, and I really think you should do more. You have a talent there for music that I don't think very many people have seen. Thank you, each and every one of you glorious bastards at id, and to everyone else that worked on these for the memories, endless death matches in study hall, bonding moments with my friends and family, and so many other things. Thank you to the Doom community that's helped keep this series alive for now 25 years, holy shit. And thank you everyone that supports my meme page, extra props if you came here from that. Thank you John Romero and John Carmack for endlessly inspiring me to become the guy I am today and get into game development. Thank you for watching this. Literally, thank you everyone. I'm in such a good mood right now going back through all of these, and I might have finished all of them, but I'm gonna go right back to playing some Doom. Merry Christmas and Happy Holidays and snowy winter time, whatever the hell you want to call it. Be safe out there and take care of yourself.